Hello, ladies and gentlemen. JD Collectible is back, and today we're going to be looking at the Earthquake Royal Rumble Elite. Now, these Royal Rumble Elites are one of the specialty, that's the best way to put it, one of the specialty lines in the Elite Series, as you have several. You have Greatest Hits, Legend Series, the WrestleMania Series. So these are the Royal Rumble, and there are four of them in a series, usually, and they are available only. The only place that I have seen these at in person are Target, which is where I got this one from, and I've seen one at a secondhand. At a toy store, that someone had traded in. One actually was a Yokozuna figure, which we'll get to that in a few seconds. But Earthquake, and of course, Earthquake, if you grew up watching WWE in the early 90s, this guy will definitely stand out. He was one of the biggest guys on the roster back in those days. And the thing that really caught my attention about this was the Canadian attire. I did not realize he was from Canada, or that he was even pushed in his gimmick like that. So I remember, well, we'll get into that a little later, but I want to just get you into the specifics of the box. So we see I really like that Royal Rumble logo at the top. That's really, I just like the, almost kind of like some African colors with the red and green. That's pretty interesting. Then you have, and this is a Build-A-Heart, it's a Build-A-Heart series. So you have a Build-A-Heart Jimmy Hart figure. So each figure in this series contains a part of Jimmy Hart to build. On the side, we have a menacing photo image of him. And then on the back, we see some stats about him. And I learned he's from Vancouver, British Columbia. And this was the interesting part. This blurb reads, after the Canadian Earthquake entered the 1990 Royal Rumble match, it took 5 superstars wow, they're using incorrect English. It should read, it took 5 superstars to finally eliminate the big man, and not it took 5 superstars to finally eliminate the big man. So that's a grammatical error. Need to point it out to WWE or Mattel. But and that was interesting too, because I never knew he was just called the Canadian Earthquake at some point, or that he was even, because I never recall seeing him in that blue singlet with the Canadian flag. I always remember him wearing the the singlet during his natural disaster tag team with Typhoon. And then you see the other figures in this set. We have Dakota Kai, the recently returned Dakota Kai, who is doing great in WWE. I'm so happy for her. Big E and Yokozuna. So we have a lot of big boys in this set. And the Yokozuna figure is the one I saw at a local toy store, Nerd Bombers in Greensboro. They had it for someone had traded in because it was a price higher than, because one, they don't really sell the Royal Rumble series. They have the WrestleMania series figures, but not the Royal Rumble series figures aside from that Yokozuna, and it was marked up quite a bit, so I did not get that figure. But that Yokozuna was very attractive. I mean, I don't have any Yokozuna Mattel figures, period, so hopefully I will come across that one again at a more normal price. But okay, so we got specifics, and I'm going to attempt to do something today. Now, there is a way, because I've seen it plenty of times on in videos, a way to properly open these elites. I have not done so, but we're going to, not doing it, and it's hard with one hand. It's really hard, so I was trying to open it the correct way, because apparently there's there's typically a piece of tape in the middle of these elite figures, and it's pretty much these are supposed to, and which it probably can if I have more than one hand. Okay, no, I think we got it, maybe. So you're supposed to open it this way, and it's supposed to be more simple than this. And there's tape up there, which would explain why it's a little tough. But, well, hey, it's improvement, it's growth. We'll get it together for the next video. It's not like I keep the boxes anyway, so it's not like this. Because I've seen people just slide them out so easily, and they must remove the tape from the top. That has to be it, and then it should be just a simple slide out of the plastic. case that contains the figure. Something like that. But we'll worry about that later. So, all right. So we have, and I don't care about the Jimmy Hart stuff. That's, I'm not. I'm more than likely, I'm not going to get all the figures in this set anyway. Because the only figure that I would be remotely interested in getting would be Yokozuna if I come across him. I'm not getting the color Kai. Oh wow. Let me switch to my. No, I'm going to keep this hand. So it looks like we have some. These are just okay, rubber. Once I thought a variety. Bands around the arms. So okay. Wow, that was tougher than what I thought, but here we go. So here is Earthquake, and of course he has interchangeable hands, as all these elites do. And let's see what we got. So let me bring it a little more level. So just due to the nature of him being a big guy, this is a bigger figure than the norm, which is what I love about the elites, is that, they do these figures true to the scale of the wrestler. So you will never see a Rey Mysterio figure this thick. You will see, of course, Earthquake. And Yokozuna, the Yokozuna figure is actually larger than this, much larger. Omos figure is bigger than the norm. A Braun Strowman figure is bigger than the normal figure. So that's one thing I just really like, that attention to detail with these elites. I love the blue. That Canadian, I don't know if that's Canadian blue, is that a color? But the blue with the Canadian flag is a very nice touch. You have the Canadian flag on both boots. I love that. I just love this blue. And I don't know, I need, when I finish this, I'm going to actually research, go on Wikipedia and see if this is actually, or Google if this is Wikipedia blue. I mean, Canadian blue, that's a color, but we have the Canadian symbol on the torso. Then we have a tattoo. Looks like some kind of a bear, panda, or maybe a hog, something of that nature. Chest hair painting, back of it, pretty standard, but a really solid figure, and a guy, and then of course, very true. We have the balding head, very accurate. They so apparently, and you can see from the pictures too, balding in the middle. So that is very realistic, lifelike, a menacing growl on his face. And from what I remember about Earthquake, because he was, he was in my time in the 90s, definitely. I remember him more so in his WWE run with, as a part of Natural Disasters tag team. Also remember him in WCW. He had came in WCW after Hogan came over in 94, and he had a couple of gimmicks. He had a gimmick, I think, of the Shark, which there was an elite figure of that too. I remember seeing that years ago, and I think he was known, he had another gimmick as well. I think he was known as the Guardian. No, that was Big Boss Man. He was known as the Guardian Angel, but he had a second gimmick in WCW. I'm sure of it, in that mid 90s, that 94 and 95 era. I believe he was a part of Dungeon of Doom faction, which was Hogan's big rival in 95. And then after that, I remember him making an appearance, and I saw this years ago on YouTube, and this was in the thick of the NWO, angle. So this had to have been 97, I'm thinking. And he came back on an episode of Nitro. It was him and two other performers, and I don't know if they were all ex, WWE guys, but it stood out to me, because I just thought after the Shark, and maybe the Shark was the only gimmick, but he came back for that event, and then pretty much was done with WCW. And I did not know until years later he was actually a part of the stable in WWF, in WWE, the Oddities. If you remember, in 1998, the Oddities were one of the kind of hottest acts in the company for a brief period of time, with Luna Vachon, Insane Clown Posse, Kurgan, Golg, and I believe he was Golga. He was the guy that he wore the max like a brown leather max. I believe that was Earthquake. Well, real John, no, Earthquake, if I recall correctly. I'm pretty sure it was. But he was in that group, and he was he had to have been the max person. Um, I believe. I think his name was Golga, if I'm correct. But I will do some digging on that. Sadly, he passed away. Not only is John Tenta, his real name John Tenta. Sadly, Tenta passed away in 2006 from a form of cancer, and I remember reading about that at the time in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. And he was young. He was not even 50, I believe. He had an aggressive form of cancer, and one thing I always heard about him, even through reading that story and just know what other people said about him, is that he was one of the nicest guys in the business. He was a very just sweetheart, a very good attitude. So that's the one that's a consistent thing I've heard about him, is his attitude. So, and also he had history. He was a sumo wrestler before he came to WWE. He was a sumo wrestler. He actually started in sumo before he started in professional wrestling back in I want to say this had to have been the 80s. And and a lot of that history I do not know after that, because I don't know if he had a brief foray in wrestling in Japan, but I do know he did start out as a sumo before his pro wrestling career. So I think that is all I have on John Tenta, Earthquake. So hope you've enjoyed this review. And again, I just really, I love these figures that just have size on them and have a little weight to them, as they say. So hope you enjoyed this video again. I have a lot to get through, a lot of figures, a lot of content to show you guys, so I will do so as my schedule permits. So again, hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great rest of the day, and I will see you again after a while.